You wake up and reach for your phone almost automatically, like you have done every single day for years, and before you even realize it, your thumb is already moving toward the screen, ready to scroll, ready to check notifications, ready to get that familiar feeling of instant stimulation. But this time, something slightly different happens, because just before your thumb touches the screen, you pause for a moment and pull your hand back. It feels like a small decision, something insignificant, something that should not matter much, but inside your brain, something important has already started to change. Something most people never experience simply because they never give their brain enough space to reset. Most people think social media is just entertainment, something harmless that fills time. But in reality, it is a system that constantly trains your brain, shaping your attention span, your emotional responses, and your behavioral patterns, often without you even realizing it. Every time you scroll, every time you refresh, and every time you check for new content, your brain receives a small burst of dopamine. And over time, your brain begins to expect that stimulation constantly, which changes how you feel when that stimulation is not present. This is why stopping feels uncomfortable, because your brain has adapted to a high level of stimulation, and when you suddenly remove it, your system does not relax, it reacts. Welcome to Health Simplified, where we break down what is really happening inside your body in a way that actually makes sense. And if you find this useful, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, because it helps more than you think and allows us to keep creating this kind of content. Now let's understand what actually happens when you stop using social media for 7 days, not just from a behavioral perspective, but from a neurological and biological perspective. On the first day, the change feels quiet, but your brain notices immediately, because it has been operating on constant stimulation for a long time. Fast scrolling, endless novelty, and rapid bursts of information. And suddenly, all of that input is gone. At first, this creates a feeling of restlessness. You may feel slightly uncomfortable, you get bored faster than usual, and you might even feel like something is missing. And this is because your brain is expecting stimulation that is no longer there. In simple terms, your brain has been functioning at a high stimulation level, and now it is being forced to operate at a lower baseline, which feels unfamiliar and uncomfortable. By the second day, the effect becomes more noticeable, and you may find yourself reaching for your phone without even realizing it, almost like your body is acting on its own. And this is not just a habit, it is a learned neural pattern that your brain has built over time. Your brain has linked boredom with scrolling, and now that link is broken, which is why you may feel distracted, low on motivation, or even slightly irritated, because your reward system is trying to adjust to a completely different pattern. Think about how often you check your phone without even thinking. That automatic behavior is exactly what is being disrupted during this process, and this is where the real challenge begins. The third day is usually the hardest, and this is the point where many people give up, because the craving for stimulation becomes stronger, and your brain actively tries to bring you back to your old habits. But underneath this discomfort, something important is happening, because your dopamine receptors, which had become less sensitive due to constant stimulation, are now slowly beginning to recover. When your brain is constantly overloaded with stimulation, it reduces its sensitivity to dopamine. But when that stimulation is removed, your brain gradually starts to reset, and this process takes time. This is why the discomfort you feel is not a sign of failure, but actually a sign that your brain is adapting and becoming more balanced. By the fourth day, a subtle shift begins to occur, and while it may not feel dramatic, you start to notice that your ability to focus improves, and you can stay on a task longer without needing constant distraction. This happens because your brain is no longer being trained to switch attention every few seconds, and instead, it begins to return to a more natural and stable rhythm. In simple terms, your attention span starts to rebuild itself, And this is one of the most important benefits of reducing overstimulation. By the 5th day, emotional changes become more noticeable because without constant exposure to comparison, excitement, and stress from social media, your mood starts to stabilize. You may not feel extremely happy, but you will likely feel calmer, more in control, and less reactive. And this is because your brain is no longer experiencing constant emotional spikes. Social media creates rapid emotional fluctuations, and when those are removed, your emotional state becomes more consistent and predictable. You may also notice something unexpected, which is that time starts to feel different. Your day feels longer, less rushed, and more present, and this is because your brain is no longer processing rapid bursts of information all the time. By the 6th day, mental clarity improves even more. Your thoughts feel less cluttered, more organized, and easier to follow, because your brain is no longer overloaded with fragmented information. At this stage, your cognitive load decreases, which means your brain has more capacity to focus on important tasks and deeper thinking. Your memory may also improve slightly, and your focus begins to feel more natural rather than forced, which is a clear sign that your brain is stabilizing. By the 7th day, the difference becomes clear. Your brain is now functioning in a more balanced way, with improved dopamine sensitivity, more stable focus, and reduced emotional fluctuations. But the most important change is not just how you feel, it's how you respond. Because now you are no longer reacting automatically to every urge, you are making decisions consciously. This is where real control begins, because the goal is not to completely quit social media forever, but to regain control over how you use it. When you control your attention, you start to control your behavior, and over time that leads to better decisions, better focus, and a better overall quality of life. Think about how much time is lost every single day to unconscious scrolling, and how different your life could be if that time was used more intentionally. Now imagine extending this beyond 7 days. Imagine what happens after 14 days or 30 days when your brain has even more time to adapt and reset. This is where long-term transformation begins, because once your brain becomes more sensitive to normal levels of stimulation again, you no longer need constant input to feel engaged or focused. Simple tasks become easier, deep focus becomes possible, and your overall mental state becomes more stable. So now the real question is this. If your brain can change this much in just 7 days, what do you think could happen if you continued for 30 days or longer? Drop a comment below and tell me what is the longest you have gone without social media and whether you would actually try this for 7 days. And if you know someone who spends most of their time on their phone, share this with them because they might not even realize what it is doing to their brain. Stay with Health Simplified because the more you understand, the more control you gain.